Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, enters life like a spark catching fire, blazing, urgent, uncontainable. Governed by Mars, the planet of war, energy, and drive, Aries incarnates the spirit of initiation. In youth, this fire sign bursts forth with a thirst for conquest, a need to prove itself, and a natural magnetism that propels it toward leadership. The world to an Aries child is not a place to fear or tiptoe around, but a battlefield waiting for a hero. The journey begins with impulse, courage, and an irrepressible need to assert individuality. In the early stages of life, Aries often learns by trial and error, leaping before looking, acting before thinking. There is an urgency in the Aries soul to carve out space in the world, to be first, to pioneer. Challenges are not obstacles but invitations to rise. They rush headlong into experience, fueled by an innate knowing that action is the answer. Mistakes do not weaken Aries, they galvanize it. Every fall is a lesson in strength, every burn a mark of glory. The early years are often stormy, marked by rebellion, impatience, and the fierce defense of autonomy. But even this chaos is sacred, for Aries must burn off the inauthentic to find the flame of true purpose. As Aries matures, the raw fire begins to shape itself into a focused blaze. Experience tempers impulsiveness into strategy. Battles are no longer chosen for ego, but for meaning. While youthful Aries seeks victory to prove its worth, the evolved Aries fights for causes beyond the self. Leadership is no longer about dominance, but about inspiring others to rise. Aries learns that true courage is not in attacking, but in persevering, in standing tall in the face of inner doubts, and in championing justice for the vulnerable. The warrior becomes a protector, not just of themselves but of others who need strength. Astrologically, the Mars rulership matures through the cycles of Saturn, particularly around the first Saturn return at approximately age 29. Here, Aries is tested not in their ability to act, but in their capacity to endure. The fire must now carry weight. Responsibility replaces recklessness, and the quick burn must evolve into sustained passion. Aries learns patience not through surrender, but through purpose. What once was a sprint becomes a marathon. The journey demands clarity of will and depth of spirit. Aries becomes the phoenix, not just the flame, reborn from every defeat with greater wisdom and power. Throughout midlife, Aries begins to realize that vulnerability is not weakness, but an extension of bravery. The mask of invincibility starts to crack, revealing the tender heart beneath the armor. Aries, once afraid to slow down, begins to value stillness, not as a void, but as fertile ground for the next leap forward. The internal fire is no longer wasted on fleeting desires. It is consecrated for visions that require endurance and belief. Relationships deepen as Aries learns to share the spotlight, to listen as well as speak, to build rather than conquer. The hero becomes a mentor, the soldier becomes a guide. As the later years approach, the Aries soul reflects the glory of a lifetime lived on the edge of courage. The scars are worn proudly, not as signs of suffering, but as proof of survival. There is an agelessness to Aries, for the fire never dims, only transforms. The elders of Aries are alchemists of willpower, channeling their immense life force into wisdom, inspiration, and legacy. They do not retire from life, they reforge themselves anew. Whether through teaching, storytelling, or simply embodying a life of passion and resilience, they ignite others with the same sacred flame that launched their journey. The evolution of Aries is a saga of ignition, transformation, and transmutation. From impetuous flame to eternal light, Aries travels from the rawness of battle to the grace of mastery. It is a soul forged in fire, destined to illuminate others, not by overshadowing them, but by daring them to burn just as brightly. The journey is not about taming the fire, it is about learning to wield it with purpose. Aries is born to begin, but it lives to become. This growth is not linear, but epic. Every cycle, every storm, every triumph adds another verse to the poem of its becoming. Through the stars, the struggles, and the sacred fire of Mars, Aries rises, always forward, always fearless. Aries is not only the first sign of the zodiac, it is the cosmic spark that ignites the great wheel of life. Its soul is infused with the sacred mission of initiation. But what lies beneath the obvious valor and motion of Aries is a deeper, often overlooked spiritual narrative, a story of divine will-seeking embodiment. Aries is not here merely to act but to awaken dormant energies in the collective. This sign carries the archetypal force of the trailblazer, not as a solitary figure, but as the one who opens the gates for others to follow. In doing so, Aries becomes a symbol of cosmic trust, born with no guarantees, no promises, only the inner voice that whispers, "Go first." At the soul level, Aries is bound to the eternal rhythm of beginnings. Unlike others who may require certainty before moving, Aries advances fueled by instinct, often diving into the unknown with little more than courage. This capacity for divine recklessness is not chaos, it is faith in raw form. In the cosmic design, Aries is entrusted with being the one who walks into fire before there's proof of light. This is the sacred madness of the hero's path. Aries knows, deep within, that hesitation can be more dangerous than failure. The universe conspires with those who dare, and Aries dares more completely than any other sign. One of the most hidden dimensions of Aries' evolution is the journey toward inner sovereignty. While it may appear to others that Aries constantly seeks external battles, the true war is often waged within, the battle between reaction and mastery, between ego and essence. In the early years, Mars charges Aries forward with the hunger of desire and the thrill of challenge. But as life unfolds, Aries begins to encounter mirrors that demand reflection. It faces adversaries who are not enemies, but teachers. Each confrontation becomes an invitation to know oneself more deeply, to discover the sacred discipline required to channel power without destruction. Aries begins to understand that to lead is not to dominate, but to embody integrity so fiercely that others are uplifted in its presence. Another profound, often unspoken gift of Aries is its ability to break generational patterns. Aries souls are frequently born into family systems or societal frameworks that have stagnated or fallen into complacency. They are cosmic disruptors, not out of defiance, but necessity. Their essence carries the flame of new life, of rebellion as rebirth. This mission is never easy. Aries must often stand alone, misunderstood, accused of selfishness or restlessness. But in reality, Aries is answering an ancient call to bring forward that which has been lost, the raw, unfiltered truth of being. Through their courage to challenge the old, they become agents of liberation for others who lack the strength to move. In matters of love and connection, Aries is often painted as impulsive or selfish, yet this overlooks the depth of devotion Aries brings when truly awakened. Love, for Aries, is a battlefield only when trust is absent. When evolved, Aries becomes a fiercely loyal and protective companion. They fight not to possess, but to preserve. They love not out of need, but from the overwhelming overflow of energy they carry. True Aries love is a fire that warms, not burns. It is a flame that refuses to be extinguished by time or distance. It is an echo of the original spark that formed stars. From an astrological standpoint, Aries is shaped profoundly by its aspects and transits, particularly those involving Pluto, Saturn, and Chiron. The Pluto-Aries interaction calls forth the shadow, demanding the transformation of power through surrender. When Saturn touches Aries, it forges discipline from chaos, turning sparks into focused flames. Chiron's influence reveals that Aries' greatest wounds often stem from feeling unseen or unworthy unless achieving. Yet it is through these very wounds that Aries discovers healing, by realizing that being is enough, that existence itself is already heroic. Chiron in Aries teaches that the deepest strength is vulnerability made conscious. Even the physical body of Aries is part of its sacred design. Ruled by the head, Aries represents not just action but vision. It sees what does not yet exist and dares to act upon it. The headaches and pressures often experienced by Aries individuals are not random. They are symptoms of carrying a consciousness that wants to move faster than the world allows. The body becomes a temple of initiation, urging Aries to listen, to align, and to integrate fire with breath. As the soul evolves, the body follows, becoming less a weapon and more a vessel of divine will. In the broader astrological cycles, Aries takes on new roles in each planetary era. In times of stagnation, Aries incarnates to stir revolution. In times of fear, Aries is born to model audacity. In periods of decay, Aries plants seeds for the new age. Aries lives at the edge of epochs, often misunderstood in the moment, but remembered as a harbinger in retrospect. Their actions ripple forward, reshaping cultures, movements, and generations. The spiritual path of Aries is not linear. It spirals upward through trials, triumphs, collapses, and renewals. Each loop burns away a layer of illusion until only essence remains. This is where Aries becomes immortal, not in body, but in legacy. Its flame lives on in every soul it inspired, every injustice it challenged, every truth it dared to speak. To be Aries is to live with divine urgency, to walk into storms with eyes wide open, to claim a life of purpose forged in fire. It is not an easy road, but it is sacred. For Aries does not seek peace through avoidance. It finds peace through conquest of the self. And in that final reckoning, when the warrior sets down the sword and looks to the stars, there is no regret. Only the unshakable knowing that the fire was never wasted, that the journey was always holy, and that the light carried was always meant to awaken the dawn. There is a cosmic loneliness inherent in the Aries path that is rarely spoken of, yet it shapes the essence of its growth. Being the first means there are no footsteps to follow, no proven maps to consult. Aries is not only the one who leads, but often the one who must walk alone. This solitude is not a punishment but a rite of passage. It teaches Aries to trust something greater than approval, its own divine compass. The Aries soul must often move through deserts of misunderstanding, carrying within a vision others have not yet caught up to. This isolation forges an unshakable inner light, one that burns even when the world offers no warmth in return. In the celestial wheel, Aries carries the archetype of the divine child, pure potential, bursting with the enthusiasm of creation itself. But this child is not naive. It is sacredly innocent, untouched by cynicism, fearless in the face of the unknown. The evolution of Aries is the transformation of this sacred innocence into divine confidence. Along the way, the world will try to harden Aries, to tame the fire, to shame the immediacy of its instincts. But the fire is not meant to be tamed, it is meant to be consecrated. Aries learns to stop apologizing for being too much, too fast, too bold. The very energy they were told to dim becomes the source of their greatest breakthroughs. The fire of Aries is not only external, it is deeply intuitive. Beneath the armor, Aries carries a primal intelligence, a connection to the raw will of the universe. This instinctive knowing bypasses logic and touches truth at its source. When Aries begins to honor this inner voice rather than suppress it in favor of pleasing others, a great shift occurs. The chaos of action becomes the clarity of alignment. Aries does not need to have all the answers. It only needs to obey the spark that moves it forward. In doing so, it becomes a vessel for creative force, a living example of what it means to trust the pulse of life. In the spiritual evolution of Aries, there is a hidden transformation that occurs when desire matures into devotion. Early in life, Aries wants to win, to conquer, to possess. But through the fire of experience, these wants are purified. The soul begins to desire less for itself and more for the world. The self-centered drive gives way to soul-centered service. Aries begins to fight not for glory, but for truth. It steps beyond personal victory and into the battlefield of collective awakening. Here, Aries becomes a sacred warrior, one who does not fight to destroy, but to liberate. Every wound becomes a portal to greater strength, every heartbreak a bridge to greater love. Astrologically, Aries is part of the cardinal cross, the great initiators of the Zodiac. Yet its power is not only about beginnings, but about catalyzing movement in others. Aries carries the divine spark that ignites transformation wherever it goes. Sometimes this ignition is subtle, a mere glance, a word, a presence that awakens something dormant in another soul. Other times, it arrives like a thunderclap, shaking the ground beneath those who have grown complacent. Aries rarely sees the full impact of its influence, for its role is to light the fire, not to tend it. The path continues forward, always seeking the next frontier, the next horizon of becoming. One of the most profound yet often invisible strengths of Aries is resilience. Much is made of its courage and power, but it is in Aries' ability to rise, again and again, that its true heroism lives. When others would retreat, Aries rises. When the world falls silent in fear, Aries speaks. Even when wounded, exhausted, or betrayed, Aries returns to the path, often without recognition, because the flame inside refuses to die. This indomitable spirit is not born from arrogance, but from alignment with a greater force, the will of evolution itself. Aries is not merely surviving life. It is transforming it through the alchemy of action. In the realm of the collective, Aries also plays a crucial role during times of global upheaval. When systems collapse and structures falter, Aries souls incarnate to rebuild from the ashes. These beings are coded for crisis not because they seek it, but because they know how to meet it. They are the first responders of the zodiacal universe, the ones who can enter the storm while others still seek shelter. Their clarity of action, their refusal to be paralyzed by fear, becomes a lighthouse in moments of collective darkness. And though they may not always be thanked in their time, their presence rewrites destiny in ways that ripple far beyond the immediate. As Aries ages, it becomes less about motion and more about mastery. The movement continues, but it becomes refined, elegant, precise. Aries learns that stillness can be the most powerful act of all when done with presence. It learns to listen deeply to others, to the body, to the cosmos. This is not a surrender of fire, but the refinement of it. The wild flame becomes an eternal lamp, burning with wisdom, discernment, and grace. The aged Aries carries stories not written in books, but carved into the bones through a lifetime of choosing courage. Ultimately, the legacy of Aries is not in the battles won or the titles earned, but in the fires kindled in other hearts. Its life becomes a torch passed on, a reminder that beginnings are holy, that daring is divine, and that it is not only safe to leap into the unknown, but necessary. Aries teaches that the world does not change through waiting, but through movement, through presence, through the sacred decision to rise. In the great tapestry of the Zodiac, Aries is the drumbeat that calls the soul to action, the horn that sounds before the charge, the fire that refuses to be extinguished. To live as Aries is to say yes to life in its rawest, purest form, to embrace the quest without knowing the end, to face the dragons and the dawn alike, and to blaze a trail where there was none. This is not simply a sign. It is a sacred flame, forever burning, forever becoming. In the grand architecture of the cosmos, Aries stands not only as a symbol of initiation but as a vessel of divine acceleration. Beyond the obvious traits of bravery and pioneering, there lies an even deeper metaphysical function that Aries fulfills in the zodiacal symphony. Aries is the activator of dormant timelines, the ignition key of soul contracts that must unfold with urgency. Where others require preparation, Aries is the embodiment of immediate divine readiness. There is a reason this sign governs the beginning of spring, the season of resurrection and rebirth. Aries is not just a warrior. It is the harbinger of life returning to the earth, of spirit descending into matter with conviction and clarity. Beneath its fiery surface, Aries holds a sacred contract with cosmic order, to disrupt stagnation wherever it is found. Whether in relationships, societies, or internal belief systems, Aries cannot tolerate decay hidden behind comfort. It is here to provoke necessary friction, to challenge the status quo not out of rebellion alone, but as an expression of sacred honesty. In this sense, Aries functions like lightning, a sudden, brilliant disruption that electrifies the sky and makes all things visible. Invisibility cannot hide from Aries. Falsehoods cannot mask themselves in its presence. The Aries soul becomes a divine mirror, not through passive reflection but through catalyzing energy that forces truth into the open. The esoteric anatomy of Aries connects directly to the cosmic mind. As the ruler of the head and brain, Aries channels pure willpower and divine impulse. This connection is not merely intellectual but deeply energetic, as if Aries were a conductor of celestial force. Often, Aries acts before it can explain why, because it is moving with guidance too swift for language. The higher octave of Aries lives not from planning but from knowing. In this state, Aries embodies the archetype of the sacred instinct, action aligned so perfectly with soul that it transcends justification. This is why Aries must learn to trust itself fully. Self-doubt becomes a distortion of its essence, a severing of the divine current that flows through it like flame through oxygen. As Aries evolves, it becomes increasingly aware of the sacred responsibility it carries. The immature Aries may seek conquest for validation, but the awakened Aries knows it is here not to dominate, but to consecrate space through action. It becomes a protector of the sacred, a guardian of momentum, a defender of beginnings that need nurturing. When Aries walks into a room, change begins because its energy demands evolution. It does not wait for permission because it is permission. And yet, the higher path of Aries also teaches humility, not the kind born from submission, but the kind forged in the realization that being first does not mean being better, it means being in service to something larger than self. This deeper humility becomes a pillar in the Aries journey. In the fires of ego, Aries is tempered. Through repeated initiations, some chosen, some forced, Aries learns the cost of unchecked force. The more it matures, the more it channels energy with precision rather than explosion. It begins to listen to the silences between actions, to observe the ripples its presence creates. It starts to operate not only as a lone pioneer but as a conscious architect of energy, wielding its fire with the grace of one who has walked through many wars and now seeks peace not through surrender, but through mastery. The evolution of Aries also involves learning to harness time as an ally rather than an enemy. In its early expressions, Aries often races against time, fearing delay, despising hesitation. But as it deepens into its soul, Aries begins to realize that true timing is not a matter of speed, but of alignment. There is power in waiting when that waiting is conscious. There is force in stillness when that stillness is rooted in trust. The fire does not go out simply because it is held. It becomes stronger, more focused, more enduring. Aries learns to ride the rhythms of divine unfolding rather than trying to force them open with sheer will. This is where Aries begins to touch the frequency of the sage, not just the warrior. Aries also has a sacred relationship with identity itself. As the first sign, it is the place where I am is declared for the first time. But this identity is not fixed. Throughout its life, Aries will shed skins again and again, often feeling like it is burning down only to be reborn from the ashes of its former self. This continual renewal is not a failure of consistency. It is the very signature of authenticity in motion. Aries shows that to evolve, one must be willing to outgrow even one's own name. It is not here to hold onto the past, but to embody what is true now. This constant becoming is exhausting to some, but for Aries it is sacred. There is no home in stillness for too long, no refuge in what once worked. It must keep moving, keep becoming, keep calling forth the next version of self. In the broader mythos of existence, Aries embodies the divine warrior archetype not only in battle but in devotion. It becomes the protector of innocence, the guardian of dreams not yet manifested, the champion of those too weary to speak. The Aries elder becomes the firekeeper, tending the ancestral flame that others gather around. In this way, Aries is not only the beginning of personal journeys but the eternal spark within collective purpose. Its presence in humanity ensures that hope always has a heartbeat, that action always has a champion, that becoming is never forgotten in the safety of being. In realms beyond the physical, Aries echoes through archetypal fields as the force that keeps creation in motion. It is the first breath of spirit into matter, the pulse that cracks open inertia. Without Aries, evolution would stall. Without Aries, dreams would die in their potential. Its essence is not only necessary, it is divine. Every time a soul says yes to the unknown, every time a heart acts despite fear, every time a voice speaks truth into silence, the spirit of Aries lives again. In this endless cosmic play, Aries is both fire and force, birth and becoming, sword and spark. Its path is not easy, but it is sacred. And through the fires it walks, through the thresholds it dares to cross, Aries teaches all of existence what it means to live aligned with the will of creation itself. To be Aries is not to burn out in pursuit of glory, but to burn clean in service to truth. It is not a race. It is a revelation, and it begins again every time the soul chooses to rise. In the sacred cosmic blueprint, Aries holds a frequency so primal and pure that it transcends the personality level and reaches into the very mechanics of divine manifestation. Aries is not only the initiator of action but the channel through which life insists on existing. Its force is not meant merely to begin projects or to start adventures. It is the spiritual fulcrum upon which all things new are birthed into being. Aries is the courageous permission slip the universe gives itself to be reborn in every instant, in every breath, in every soul that dares to say yes to the unknown. Beyond the battlefields and victories, beyond the independence and fire, Aries is the sacred essence of will-made form. It embodies the truth that existence itself is a revolutionary act. There is no life without risk, no birth without disruption, no creation without fire. Aries is this divine fire, the living embodiment of the first flame, the ignition of the sacred journey. It is this vibration that separates dream from destiny, idea from incarnation. Aries is the force that moves intention out of the ether and into matter, not slowly, not cautiously, but with a lightning strike of pure becoming. The deeper path of Aries cannot be understood through personality traits alone. It must be felt in the marrow, in the soul's own longing to rise from stillness. Aries is the movement of spirit that cannot be contained by fear or logic. It is the leap into the void not because it is safe, but because it is time. When Aries moves, the world must follow. It is not leading for recognition. It is leading because the call to move is louder than the need to be understood. And in that movement, Aries carves roads in the wilderness that others never thought to travel. Often misunderstood as impulsive or aggressive, Aries actually carries a profoundly pure frequency of trust. It is the trust in motion itself, in the alignment of now, in the wisdom of urgency. Aries does not act because it lacks patience. It acts because it carries the blueprint of divine immediacy. It knows that delay is sometimes betrayal, not of others, but of the self. And in its most refined form, Aries becomes not rash, but radiant, responding to life not as a threat, but as a partner in the dance of becoming. The matured Aries no longer seeks to conquer, but to catalyze, to awaken, to ignite dormant greatness wherever it finds it. The subtle power of Aries lies also in its relationship with resistance. More than any other sign, Aries is built to meet resistance, not to be crushed by it, but to transform it into clarity. Where others see obstacles, Aries sees thresholds. Resistance is not a wall but a mirror, showing Aries exactly where it is needed most. Through this alchemical confrontation, Aries discovers its higher calling, not to avoid resistance, but to transmute it into momentum. Every block becomes a signal, every opposition a spark. Aries does not push blindly, it pushes because the soul demands passage. It is this willingness to face resistance that makes Aries a spiritual warrior of the highest order. In the evolution of the Aries soul, there comes a profound initiation that changes the very texture of its fire. The raw flame becomes sacred heat. The scream becomes song. The fight becomes offering. Aries begins to understand that its energy is not just a force of disruption, but of consecration. It is here to bless the world through presence, not only through movement. And in this sacred stance, Aries becomes a beacon, a lighthouse of vitality and truth that others may draw from, even without words. Its very being becomes an invitation to rise. In karmic astrology, Aries often carries the imprint of past lives where action was stifled, where the voice was silenced, where individuality was punished. And so, in this incarnation, Aries is born with a cellular urgency to express, to act, to move. It may not always know why it must begin, only that it must. These soul memories are not mistakes, they are fuel. The Aries soul comes not to repeat old patterns of suppression, but to break them once and for all. And by doing so, it liberates not only itself but the ancestral lines that came before. Aries becomes the breaker of chains, the restorer of divine freedom, the sacred rebel whose fire purifies the past and births the future. There is also a deep connection between Aries and the cosmic child, the uncorrupted essence of divine enthusiasm, the holy innocence that still believes in the miracle of existence. This child is not weak or naive. It is radiant with divine trust. It moves without fear because it has not yet been taught to disbelieve in its own worth. As Aries matures, it must work to preserve this innocence, to guard it not behind walls, but within devotion. The child within Aries is not something to outgrow. It is the very spark that must be protected as the soul grows strong. For it is this childlike essence that fuels miracles, that dares to imagine new worlds, that sees possibility where others see only endings. Astrologically, Aries also serves as a great calibrator of truth. Its raw nature cannot tolerate falsity, stagnation, or pretense. It exposes the real, not through calculation, but through presence. When Aries walks into a situation, masks fall away. This fire reveals not because it tries to, but because it is. In this way, Aries becomes an unwitting prophet, revealing what has been hidden, stirring what has been asleep. Its very existence becomes a challenge to mediocrity, a living sermon of vitality in a world that too often forgets to breathe deeply or love boldly. The presence of Aries in the chart of humanity ensures that the wheel of evolution never stops turning. It is the divine insurgent, the spirit of revolution, the eternal cry of the soul that demands not comfort, but transformation. Aries does not arrive to keep things as they are. It arrives to destroy what no longer serves and to call forth what is waiting to be born. It may be messy, it may be wild, but it is always sacred. To live as Aries is to live on the edge of becoming, to carry the burden and the blessing of divine ignition. It is to walk through fire and become it. It is to rise not only for oneself, but for all those who are still afraid to stand. Aries does not ask if it will succeed. It moves because it knows that the movement itself is the success. The sacred fire of Aries is not meant to be tamed or explained. It is meant to burn in full glory, to light the way for those who forgot their own fire, to awaken the dawn in a world still clinging to the dark. In this grand celestial dance, Aries is not a note, it is the first drumbeat. It is the call, the charge, the thunder of new life. And long after it has passed, the world is left forever changed, alight with the trace of its fire, echoing with the sound of its courage, and awakened by the brilliance of its eternal yes. Aries, as the primordial flame of the Zodiac, carries within its cosmic DNA the impulse of divine assertion. It is the first sound in the celestial silence, the spark that rends open the inertia of non-existence. Yet beyond its surface-level expressions of courage and action lies an even deeper truth. Aries is the sacred embodiment of pure being, undiluted and unafraid. It is the pure I am spoken by the universe through flesh, through will, through blood made holy by motion. There is an elemental wisdom in the Aries soul, a frequency that resonates with the thunder of creation itself. Before there was structure, before there was reason, before there was reflection, there was the flame of desire to be. That flame still burns within every Aries incarnation, not as a metaphor, but as a living force. Aries does not merely possess fire. It is fire. And this fire is not for destruction alone. It is for forging, for awakening, for baptizing the new with heat so that it might be worthy of entering time. As Aries matures through lifetimes, it discovers its relationship to divine authority. In early phases, it may seek control, dominance, or validation through action. But as the spirit refines itself, Aries understands that true authority flows not from control, but from alignment. This is the alchemy of Aries, the transformation of personal will into divine will, the evolution of impulse into intention, of reaction into revelation. It becomes less about being first and more about being true. Through this evolution, Aries is no longer merely a pioneer. It becomes a torchbearer, not just for itself but for others, lighting the path not with conquest but with consciousness. There is sacred tension in Aries, a paradox encoded in its very essence. It is the sign of beginnings, and yet it holds a memory of something eternal. It is the bringer of birth, yet it often feels as if it is running towards something already known, already promised. This inner knowledge of divine urgency gives Aries an edge that others may mistake for recklessness. But this urgency is not always from this world. It is the call of a soul that remembers the unfinished task, the eternal flame that must not go out. The Aries journey is not linear. It is cyclical, spiraling through lifetimes, always returning to the edge of a new beginning. Aries also holds a secret kinship with silence. Though ruled by Mars, the planet of action and assertion, Aries often carries within it a profound, wordless knowing. Before the battle cry, there is the breath. Before the leap, there is the stillness of the soul aligning with the will of the cosmos. In this quiet, Aries meets the divine. It learns that not all action must be loud. Some of the most powerful acts are invisible, choosing to stay, choosing to forgive, choosing to surrender not out of defeat, but as an act of ultimate strength. Aries becomes, in its maturity, not only the warrior who fights but the one who lays down the sword because the war within is won. The karmic path of Aries teaches the sanctity of self. In lifetimes where the self was sacrificed, lost, or denied, Aries returns as the great reclamation. This purpose is not selfishness, but sovereignty. To be Aries is to remember that the self is sacred, not in isolation, but as the temple of divine spark. It is a reminder that to be oneself fully is not an act of ego. It is an act of holy rebellion against a world that teaches conformity. Aries breathes life back into authenticity, reminding all souls that to be true is to be free. Aries carries the frequency of divine disruption. Where stagnation reigns, Aries brings movement. Where decay festers, Aries brings clarity. It is not here to maintain what is dying. It is here to announce what is being born. This makes Aries not only a personal archetype but a planetary one. In eras of great change, the Aries spirit awakens across the collective, appearing in visionaries, in revolutionaries, in artists and healers and warriors of light who cannot abide the old structures. Aries lives in those who challenge, who begin, who dare. It is the pulse of evolution itself. On a spiritual level, Aries governs the descent of spirit into flesh. It is the first breath of incarnation, the holy shock of entering form. This gives Aries a direct connection to the angelic realms of pure will. Every time Aries chooses to act from love rather than reaction, it becomes a transmitter of divine voltage. It electrifies its environment with the sacred possibility of choice, reminding all beings that destiny is not fixed. It is forged. The hands of Aries shape the moment into miracles, not because it waits, but because it moves. The most transcendent expression of Aries is the embodiment of divine presence in motion. Aries becomes the living flame, the walking breath of boldness, the living poem of daring sung into time. It exists not to reflect, but to shine. And in its shine, others remember their own fire. Aries does not teach by telling, teaches by being. When it stands fully in its essence, the very air around it shifts. This presence becomes a transmission. Without needing applause or agreement, it creates ripples of permission in the souls of others, a silent message. You too may rise. You too may begin. And so the journey of Aries continues, lifetime after lifetime, fire after fire, ever rebirthing into greater alignment with the divine heartbeat. It does not rest, because its essence is the rhythm of awakening. It does not wait, because the soul's arrival is now. And though the path may be lonely, though the fire may sometimes burn, Aries would choose no other way. For in the sacred forge of existence, it knows its purpose. To become the flame that no darkness can extinguish, the cry that no silence can drown, the light at the beginning of every story that was ever worth living.